Sarah Gambito. You're a Filipino American poet, essayist, and educator whose work explores race, migration, gender, grief, pedagogy, and the pressures of American identity. And so I'm really interested in hearing how has your experience as an Asian American woman shaped the way you approach voice, identity, and power in your poetry? And do you feel that influence consciously when you're writing, or does it emerge intuitively?
Yeah, no, I would say because it's so tied to how I'm discovering how I can live my life. I mean, I think about how Rilke says, live, live the questions now. I would say definitely it's much more intuitive. And I think every day I'm thinking about how language is changing and shifting and how it's important that we allow ourselves to catch up to it and we allow it to catch up with us.
What do you mean by that? That's an interesting idea that language is shifting every
Uh,
day.
I think it was not this year, but last year, the word of the year was brain rot, which I didn't I had to ask what that was. Um and it's basically what happens to your brain after hours and hours of scrolling. Um And I think the year for the word for 2026 is slop. It's AI slop, right? And so that's a construction that was not in the zeitgeist even, 5 years ago. So I think who we are, not only as informed by tech, but how we understand ourselves as fellow human beings, I think that language is shifting all the time.
You think that comes from your Asian American background, the idea that, if you're coming from one country to another, and you were born here, correct?
Hmm.
Your parents were from the Philippines.
Yeah.
Does that really open you up to the differences of language about how language is used?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that when you grow up the kid of immigrant parents, you're really conscious of the different types of Englishness is there are, and who has command of the language and who doesn't. Um, and you're aware of other languages that reign supreme when you're at home, that maybe you don't yourself have access to. My family, like many families back in the day, did not want to teach my sister and I Tagalog because they wanted us to assimilate. And so I grew up probably understanding 70 to maybe 80% of what people were saying, but it was just inadvertent. Um, and to hear that as a home language, to have access to it and not, uh, from day one, you're aware of the very complicated tapestries of language that coexist all in the same moment.
I've been to the Philippines a few times teaching and was really struck by not quite sure where I was, depending on where I was, depending on the city. I was in Angeles City and elsewhere. And so I was really struck by the how multicultural it was in many ways. The architecture looked Spanish, but nobody spoke Spanish. I think that had been forgotten. Um, the some of the names of the people, were Spanish last names.
Mhm.
Uh, it was American looking in terms of the hamburger joint. I forget Busy Bee or Bumblebee. What's the name of that?
Jollibee, Jollibee.
Jollibee.
Yeah.
The malls looked, very American, and I was constantly in a state of I won't say culture shock, but
Right.
cultural confusion. Where am I exactly? And I had to get out of the city for a while to and travel by bus around the country just to get a sense of, what the real country was like. Do you have that sense yourself of Philippine culture being, this is a bad choice of words, but I can't think of anything else, a little bit off or strange or just this conglomeration of cultures that
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
been lost? Yeah.
I think Filipino culture, Filipino American culture is inherently archipelagic. It's an archipelago of islands. There are many, many different dialects that people speak. Um, and there's a kind of beautiful expectation that you're going to encounter difference all the time. Yeah, you can go to Cebu and they speak Cebuano and they don't want to speak Tagalog. You can go to a Tagalog province and primarily they only speak Tagalog. And so there's uh, built into the culture is this heterogeneity, I think, and an embrace of that, right? The sort of um, brilliance, cacophony, uh, possibility that exists in, the many in the one.
There are thousands of islands in the Philippines,
Yeah.
and it's possible to experience many different worlds, within the Philippines. I was really impressed by how in this huge uh, archipelago of islands were so many different cultures, and really made me wonder how, you know, if Filipinos can really identify with the country or with a region, the region that they come from.
Yeah, I think it's both, really. And having grown up here in the United States, my experience is more of diaspora, right? So the complicatedness of a multifaceted sort of mother culture, and then my having to also think through a hyphenation of what it means to be American as well. Like, uh, one has to constantly embrace complexity uh, and the expectation that um, people won't necessarily see things the way you see them. Um, and to allow yourself to celebrate that and be surprised by that.
I was wondering how you became a poet and why you choose that mode to
Mhm.
express yourself.
Mhm. I think that my family is, I grew up evangelical. My family's very evangelical. And so I was memorizing Bible verses since I was like, I don't know, since I began to talk. And this idea of scripture or the sort of power of words, of God within the word, just made a lot of sense to me. And also how language could unlock possibility. Um, Based on how you were comfortable with it or felt like you didn't have it. And for me, poetry was about the compaction of language. Um, like how much can you say within an economy of words?
Poetry is ambiguous. The best poetry, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
personally, where we're not quite sure exactly what's being said, and we have to really struggle with personal meaning, even more than the meaning of the poet themselves. We have to struggle with that. So increasingly, I've been thinking of poetry as a way for us to embrace complexity,
Mhm,
to
mhm,
embrace diversity.
mhm.
And it's not just, here's a poem for English class. Let's try to figure out what the author meant. But it's deeply instructive and pedagogical, in some way. It teaches us. This brings me to your poem, Charlottesville Curriculum. So I was wondering if you could read that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Charlottesville curriculum. I am afraid of your transcendental death. When people say think of a man, I think of a brown man. Sometimes the earth grows Kayla because she can feel our suffering, yoing beneath Costco tikis. When people say think of a man, I think of a white man. I am meant to hold you in your oblique pain, your map driven pain, yoing beneath Costco tikis. I was drunk, holding my teeth in like students. I am meant to hold you in your oblique pain, your map driven pain. You die like an actor. I was drunk, holding my teeth in like students. My body was a brown dog. I shoved back into the water. You die like an actor. I beseeched but couldn't stay out of the first person. My body was a brown dog. I shoved back into the water. Hold me, hold me, hold me, hold me, hold me, I beseeched, but couldn't stay out of the first person. Where does it hurt? We say, hold me, hold me, hold me, hold me. I am afraid of your transcendental death.
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful reading. I was wondering what brought you to this poem.
Well, it was after the events in Charlottesville, the march on Charlottesville. I'm from Virginia and I went to the University of Virginia, so I know Charlottesville quite well. And so the incredible difficulty of that moment, people converging upon one another and trying to make sense of the violence, of the fear, of the maelstrom, of people wanting so deeply to be heard and to make their point and to feel like they were existing and saying what they believed. I I didn't know what to do with all the things I was feeling. And so to be honest, I just knew that I had to and I wanted to write. And this poem came very easily, in fact, because it was propelled by like a kind of desperation to try and understand how I could meet that moment in an ability for a kind of very humane mercy for all of us. And I didn't know how to do it. I kept running out of the words, but the Phantom, you can hear the repeating and stopped words, like gave me a way, an architecture by which I could find how to get at some way to speak to it. And it's still, as you were saying, like it's still a mystery to me, but it feels true to me even now. That poem still feels true to me, and I felt grateful and held by the ballast of a poetic form like Phantom because it gave me the structure and help. The form helped me write the poem.
As you were saying, that day was a day of, or the whole period during that the Charlottesville incidents. It was about identity. It was about white identity. You know, we will not replace you, or we will not be replaced. Jews will not replace us, and and the counter narratives to that. What do you make of today's moment in which white culture seems to be expressing its identity in ways that were not permissible? You know, let's say during the 60s and 70s when there was a change of attitude towards what is our place in this culture,
Mm.
and how does that fit into this work that you just read?
We're living in a time, I think, where increasingly it's easy for so many of us to, in a comfortable way, be polarized. I think that if we, as many of us that can bear to stand in some kind of complexity, maybe we can let down the sword and the shield. Uh, I think with the kind of conflagration of social media, of AI, of everything um, being delivered to a particular expectation, I think the messy outlines of what another human being is, I think a lot of us are starting to lose track of what that actually is, to contend with the messiness of self and the messiness of another person and how those things intertwine. Um, and, this was also jet fueled by the pandemic as well, when everyone was like really pushed back into a home base. And I think we need to meet each other out in the sun. And we need to realize that we may not like what we see. We may not approve of what we see, but we're still here. Like we're all on the same earth with the grass, with the sky, and can we admit that that is the truth?
Well, I love what you said about the messiness of the moment, and makes me wonder if that's actually a good thing. Maybe this is a time when all the messiness has to come out. Uh, we had these very, perhaps neat ways of thinking about racial identity, cultural identity that have been exploded because of social media, AI, the fragmentation of media. There is no one single voice. I grew up in an era where there were three channels,
Yeah.
and Walter Cronkite was the person, of truth. That's just no longer the case, and I can't figure out whether what we're going through is it's certainly horrifying on some level, but also it makes me wonder if it's needed to sort of refigure who we are and where we're going as a culture, because we are this huge multicultural mess. For all the good things, it's also messy. What do you think?
It's actually very easy, very lazy to just say, oh, it's horrifying. Um, because as you say, though, it's incredibly fertile, it's incredibly evolving, and there's a lot of opportunity and beauty. And I do think that there are a growing number, I like to believe this, of human beings that are getting impatient with the sort of sanatorium of screens. I mean, I'm not on social media anymore, but what I'm seeing is that it's increasingly being taken over by slop. And the students that I teach are increasingly um, abstemious about like what it is they want to allow into their minds. Um, and I wonder if we're going to rubber band back to people demanding more in person, more messiness. It's funny, like this is totally anecdotal and not any kind of research thing, but um, when I watch like TV, when people talk, they're like, "Well, this is genuine," or the people try to say genuinity, or they make up words. It's like this is authentic, or this is real. Like people want this sense of the real, and uh, I think all we can do, because again it's you're in the sidelines if one is just calling shots, but to be in the soup of life, and to just try to do better and to reach out and to have potlucks and to um, talk to people that don't agree with you, um, and 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 to let things be and to be kinder. I've been thinking a lot about mercy, and Portia's speech in The Merchant of Venice, and she says the quality of mercy is not strained, and how you're twice blessed if you can have mercy for yourself and mercy for another person. And it's like everybody is like nailing each other to the wall, and it's like it's so exhausting. And don't we all want something more? And I think we do. I think really we do.
Charlottesville curriculum. It's an interesting title, and I'm going to say it's a kind of a lesson. But this is what I got out of it, and this is just a couple things. One is you speak from different voices. It's not just one. It's not just one voice. And I was wondering first, who is the speaker, and who is the speaker speaking to? Could you talk about that for a bit?
Right, right. I think the slippages are on purpose. And so, in fact, Charlottesville curriculum, you think that the poem is going to hold some kind of lesson, or this idea that the poem will be didactic, but in fact, the poem resists its frame. And so, it's actually, you can't tell who's talking. And I think that that's on purpose. Um, and when you have the hold me, hold me, hold me, like to me, I think that that wish for container, that wish for embracing, it's the gesture towards, can we hold all of these things? What would it mean? What would it look like if we refused an easy lesson? Uh, and that at the end of the day, right, we're all afraid of the death, transcendental, metaphysical, actual, that we all share that human condition. And when we forget that, that's when we get into trouble.
Yeah, the opening and closing lines are really intriguing and mystifying. I am afraid of your transcendental death. Made me wonder about how fear of another's death can bring fear in us.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me wonder about that idea of experiencing vulnerability in others and how it can bring fear in us, can make us afraid of of someone else's fears. And
Yeah.
therefore we don't want to pay attention to the fears of others. We have our own fears.
When people express their fear in ways that also we can't take in, we want to extinguish it. And to castigate another, you only then imprison, castigate a part of yourself. So but that's really hard to look at, you know. It's much easier to be like, okay, that's them, and this is us.
So it makes me wonder if the Charlottesville curriculum isn't about certainty. It's not about certainty. It's about accepting ambiguity and confusion
Yeah.
that's inherent in the poem itself.
Yeah,
I-
absolutely. And
Is that the lesson to be learned?
absolutely. And I think too that though there's no kind of easy conclusion at all in the poem, what you have is the structure of the poem, the regularity, the constancy of the form where the words keep reappearing. And so there still can be structure and beauty and a holdingness within the form. So the you have this speaker who we don't know who is saying, but this kind of incredibly sort of beseeching moment to want to be held, actually to demand to be held, but then also the poem in the stanzas through the form is able to do some kind of holding.
I was also fascinated by your use of a couple words. Um, Gehala. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Gehala?
Yeah,
Which,
yeah, I need to I yeah, I'm not right now I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation myself, but I was reading trying to read about uh herbal medicine that was endemic to New York City. So I was just thinking about how the earth can sometimes respond to what it feels. And so yeah, I did a little bit of research on herbal medicine that grows here in New York City.
it's interesting. I got a different meaning because I looked this up, and the meaning I came up with was an Islamic term for a divorce
Hmm.
initiated by a female.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
so yeah, I'm not so I don't know in what
Yeah, I didn't know I didn't know that. That's interesting.
yeah, and I'm not sure if I have that right or not, but so I read that line, sometimes the earth grows kahela because she can feel our suffering. And so I was thinking the earth maybe wants to divorce itself from us who are
Hmm.
destroying it.
Yeah, I didn't know about that definition. Kayla, as I was referring to it, is like a species of flowering plant that can be used to treat um, illnesses, uh, specifically to improve blood supply to, I'm just reading here, like coronary smooth muscles. Um, so yeah, that's a definition that I didn't have access to. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that.
Well,
I just know of it as a plant.
well, either way, I mean, it could be that line could be read as an effort to perform some sort of healing, either emotional healing or physical healing, to be divorced from someone.
Mhm.
Sometimes means that you can be emotionally healed and separate and so forth. So there's this idea of healing that comes, uh, within this, in this particular line. Uh, Also, the idea of my body was a brown dog I shoved back into the corner, and that word brown dog has a really long history in American, or rather in English literature. Brown dog can sometimes be referred to as deep depression.
Hmm. Okay.
And that's how I read it. But what I liked about your piece is that the words have multiple meanings.
Hmm.
They can have multiple meanings depending on what language we're using, what variation of English that we're using. So my body was a brown dog I shoved back into the water. I read that as I'm so depressed, I have to submerge myself in something. But that was my particular reading of it.
Yeah, I don't like language that closes down multiple layers of understanding. So absolutely, I love that. Uh, it's always wonderful when someone can find themselves within a poem and that finding will look differently for different people. And that hopefully a good poem is capacious enough that it can admit many different readers and understandings. And for me, like I don't understand this poem either, but it's true for me. It's true. Like and it helped me and it helped me at that time with thinking of what happened in Charlottesville. And so I don't have to understand it.
I'm so happy to hear you say that you don't have to understand it, and you're the writer.
Yeah.
And one of the sayings that I heard in studying narrative medicine that really made a great deal of sense to me is that the writer is the last person to understand what their writing is all about, and that you need a community to add meaning to it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what the narrative medicine process is people resonating to a piece that may be opaque even to the writer.
Oh, entirely. I think that for me and many writers, it's that when a piece acquires a life spark that's outside of you. I mean, that's what it means to be alive, that it's not, it is its own self and has its own intentions. It's such it's such a blessing to just be witness to something like that. Yeah, I think I'm just agreeing with you that I love when something actually escapes me, um, because it keeps me coming back.
And that's probably one of the big advantages of growing up in a multicultural environment in which there are multiple languages. There are many ways of seeing things. We talked about the Philippines as being immensely diverse and widespread and beautiful islands with different cultures. And I'm wondering, what are you working on right now? What
Um,
moment are
yeah.
you writing out of today?
In terms of writing, I'm just writing down my dreams right now. So as they come to me, I just write them down. I don't feel the need to write poetry right now. I think the poem is maybe in the embodiment, the thing that we were talking about. This is a nice way to kind of, uh, it's a nice symmetry with how we began our talk, that I long for a kind of beingness with others. And so the poem for me is in being with my students right now.
We dream, and I've always thought that that's an unconscious form of creation out of our awareness. But they're not happening to us. We are writing these dreams. We are operating within them. We're acting within them as well. What are your thoughts about the dreams that you're having? Where do they come from? What are dreams?
They're us and not us, as you're saying. Like I don't know. Like I think they're, that's part of what I like about the poems too. Like I don't know. I don't know what the dreams are telling me right now, and I know that they are for me though. But right now, it just feels good to accept them. So much you have to fight for, and for dreams to arrive of their own accord, on their own sort of ability, feels really good. Feels like a gift.
Well, Sarah Gambito, thank you so much for being here. And it was really wonderful to talk with you. And would love to hear you reading some of your other poems and have a discussion about them. So let's stay in touch.
Yes, sounds
And
good. It was so great to speak with you, Tony. So good to, I don't know, gather around what it means to use language, what it means to meet this moment, um, with as much hope and fullness as we can. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity as well. So I look forward to being in touch.